2024 has been a stacked year for horror movies. We've gotten so many incredible horror movies. As horror fans, we have been eating so good this year. Some from big studios, some from independent studios, and everything in between. But there are some horror movies that have come out this year that nobody is really talking about because there was just no budget for marketing, so nobody knows that they exist. Nobody knows when the US release date was for some of these. So I want to go over 6 horror films that you cannot look over that have come out this year. Let's get into it. First up is Red Rooms, and this one you can rent on video on demand. I think I rented mine on Prime Video, but this is a French crime thriller horror movie. It's about this model named Kelly Ann, and she is obsessed with this high-profile case of this serial killer who is responsible for the murder of these young girls. But in this court hearing, there is a missing video of one of the murdered girls that they cannot locate. But Kelly Ann becomes obsessed with trying to track down this missing video. So we are going down the path of like dark web and just seeing her do and think of very disturbing things. This movie is highly disturbing and graphic, but like you don't see anything on screen. It's just the subject matter and what's inferred that is so jarring. And there is a scene in this movie that will just be burned into your memory forever. It's so good. Next up is Azrael. You can watch this on Shudder starting October 25th. This one had a limited theatrical release, I believe sometime last month, but I feel like not a lot of people were able to watch it because again, it was in like very limited theaters. Azrael stars Samara Weaving and it takes place many years after the rapture, and we have some remaining humans that have survived on Earth, but there are other things that have been brought to Earth, such as these demonic humanoid creatures that are all burned up and they prey upon humans. Now, in this post-rapture world where no one speaks, there is this forest-dwelling cult, and Azrael has been imprisoned by this cult, but she escapes, and now the cult is trying to hunt her down so that they can sacrifice her to these demonic humanoid creatures. Now, this movie is completely silent because a part of this whole cult is that they don't talk, and so there is literally no speech in this entire movie. So having Samara Weaving having to do so much face acting, she is incredible at this, but it's so incredibly tense. These weird demonic creatures are so incredibly freaky. I had so much fun with this movie because movies like this that like get my heartbeat like pounding, I am just locked in and all in for, and this one just totally did it for me. Next up is Humanist Vampire Seeking Consenting Suicidal Person, and you can rent this one on video on demand. I feel like this one might be a little bit more well-known or popular in other places like in Canada or other countries, but in the US, it didn't get like any theatrical release or no promotion when it came out on video on demand. So I feel like a lot of us have overlooked this one, but you should not, because it is like this dark comedy horror romance movie. It is perfect. The movie follows Sasha, a young vampire who is too sensitive to kill. So all her life, her family has been there to help her out with getting blood. However, her parents are cutting her off and now forcing her to find her own blood, which means she has to kill. Not wanting to do so, but knowing that her life is in jeopardy, Sasha is on the hunt until she meets Paul, a lonely teenager with suicidal tendencies who is consenting to giving up his life to save hers. But before she can kill him, she wants to grant Paul's last wishes. I freaking love this movie. This is in my top 10 of 2024. It's definitely light on the horror and more into like the drama, comedy, romance of it all, but it does have this like darkness to it. If you were big in the Tumblr era, this movie screams Tumblr. Like the whole aesthetic of it, the feel, the look, the quotes, the everything. I cannot say enough good things. I love this movie. Next up is the Korean horror Sleep, and you can rent this on video on demand. Sleep is about this newlywed couple who are just thriving. They're super happy. The wife is expecting, but seemingly out of nowhere, the husband starts talking in his sleep one day. And from that night forward, whenever he falls asleep, he transforms into someone or something else with no recollection of the night before. And each night it gets increasingly scarier or more violent. And the wife is now very scared for her and her baby Bibi's life. This movie has such a unique premise, and I love that up until the very end, you are theorizing like, okay, well, is he crazy? Is he possessed? Is this like a ghost? Is he actually sleepwalking? Like, you are just so engaged from start to finish with this one. Next is Outcome the Wolves. You can rent this one on video on demand. Outcome the Wolves is about this woman and her fiance who are going on a hunting trip, and she decides to invite her male best friend to come out with them. And now this hunting trip has just turned into total chaos and a fight for survival when, of course, the wolves just absolutely turn on all three of them. There's not a lot to the story of this movie, but there really doesn't have to be. It's just a way to get these people out in the woods and for wolves to attack them. But it's a nice movie to just turn your brain off and like watch this chaos and mayhem happen. It's very much like Backcountry because it's the same writer and director as Backcountry. So if you like that style of like survival horror movies, this is right up your alley. And lastly, Bibi. You can rent this one on video on demand. Bibi follows this grieving woman who is battling her inner demons, and now she is relentlessly being stalked by this mysterious person. And she begins to feel like she is losing control of her life and also just losing grip on reality. Bibi's not your typical horror movie in the sense of like slashers and blood and jump scares. It's more of that like psychological horror thriller of just not being in control of your own mind. It tells a really beautiful but tragic story about like grief and loss and guilt, but it is one of the most visually stunning movies I have seen this year. I'm not even kidding you. The camera work on this is like mesmerizing. I will say there is like a twist to the movie that might take a second viewing, at least for me it did, and then I had to go and talk to my friends who also watched the movie, and I was like, wait, did you also interpret it this way too? And they were like, okay, I just wanted to make sure as well. Maybe that won't happen to you, but it did happen to me. And there you have it, 6 horror thriller movies that have come out this year that you cannot miss. If you've seen any of these or any of these sparked your interest, let me know down in the comments. I'm super curious. I'm trying to champion these movies because there's so many comments out there that are like, oh, there's like no original horror movies or no good horror movies are coming out. But a lot of the times people just don't know that they're out there or that they've released because some of these studios don't have the marketing budget, or some of these are foreign and they didn't get a lot of like exposure in America. And so I'm trying to champion these where I'm like, people, there are good movies out there. You just really got to dig and you got to look and you got to take a chance and you got to rent. So let me know if any of these have sparked your interest, if you're planning to watch any of these. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.